Friends, hello, and welcome to episode 518 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Shaun Brown. Shaun's an adult living with type 1 diabetes, and he and I go on a journey together. We talk about a little bit of everything. If I remember correctly, I was sick when I recorded this one, so I'm not 100% certain what I said. So you can't hold me accountable. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Now, there are some things you can do without consulting your physician. For instance, you could listen to the Diabetes Pro Tip episodes of the podcast. They begin at episode 210 and are also available at diabetesprotip.com. See what I did there? It's like a weird little... Anyway, I turned it into a thing for you. I have a little extra stuff here. Oh, yeah, Shaun's on Instagram. I wanted to tell you that because I really like him. And I thought if you wanted to check him out, you could. He's Shaun Brownie. ShaunBrownie. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. We're also sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. I'd very much like it if you would check it out at contournext.com/juicebox. There are links in the show notes of your podcast player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to these and all of the sponsors. Check them out. Hey, this one's going to be interesting. I don't feel well. This is the closest you're going to come to having a conversation with me when I'm drunk or high that you're ever going to find, because my face feels like it's 7 inches in front of my skull for some reason.
That's not good.
Nah, I don't know what's going on exactly. I don't have any of the COVID symptoms, so I'm feeling pretty good about that part. I just got sick the other day. But I don't have any symptoms other than my head feels a little dancey and I'm a little achy, but that's about it. So
bummer.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry to hear that.
Nah, that's okay. I'll get through it. I usually I usually get sick and I usually kick my illnesses in a day. And this one's
that's quick.
Yeah, this one's holding on to me a couple days, so this must be worse than usual. My immune system is probably what killed Arden's pancreas, honestly. It's really strong. I just don't normally get sick and stay sick.
My name's Shaun Brown, type 1 diabetic. Just turned 40, and I honestly didn't have anything prepared. I thought you were just going to ask me questions.
I am going to ask you questions. I just need you to introduce yourself. That's all. You listen to the show, right, Shaun?
You know, I listen to it pretty frequently. Yeah,
and at the beginning of every episode, someone's like, "Hey, I'm Shaun." Like blah blah. You knew this was coming, didn't you?
Yeah, I honestly didn't premeditate it very deeply, so
I'm good with that. I appreciate that, actually.
Yeah, I figured out. I actually at first I had written some stuff down that to kind of think about what I may need to say, and then I thought, that's absolutely pointless because I already know how you do the show.
Yeah. We're not going to ask a bunch of like scripted out questions. That won't be any
right.
Fun. Well, listen, you said you're 40 years old.
And just turned 40. Yeah.
Wow, happy birthday! And you've had diabetes for quite some time. How old were you when you were diagnosed?
So here's the funny thing: like, I always have to kind of quantify it by the grade I was in, because I never deeply thought about like. Even the idea of what people call a diversary.
Yeah.
That's absolutely new to me. Like I've never even heard of such a thing until I kind of joined the ecosphere of Instagram and such.
Yeah, that's a social media construct, I think.
Yeah, right. It must be, because I'm like, what is that? And I honestly was completely foreign to me to celebrate it too. It seems kind of weird, but I guess I get it. But so I was in 6th grade. Or just starting 6th grade. So that puts me probably around 12.
Okay, cool. Well, I have to say, I completely understand you thinking about that. We've never had a celebration marking Arden's day that she was diagnosed. I don't know that I could. Well, I do know about myself that if I didn't have my blog, I wouldn't know when Arden was diagnosed other than to know that it was after her birthday, which would put it in the later summer. But I do know it was in August. But even as I'm being pressed, I don't know the date. So yeah. And it's up to you, right? How you want to deal with it or not deal with it, or, I think it's one of those things maybe you see people do that, that has a lot of value for them. And if you don't need that, then it
I didn't. Yeah. And I didn't mean to downplay it or anything like that, though.
You didn't. By the way, don't forget, I'm sick. So this could go awkwardly. I don't know. I've never recorded when I've had a head cold like this before.
I'm pretty sure I already said it on that foot because I was all nervous about how to introduce myself. So. I did the hard work for you, man.
No. I listen. I what I'm saying is I can see either side of it. I can see wanting to mark the occasion and celebrate it. Look at me. I've gone another year with this thing, and I completely get that. It's just not something that has occurred to us to do. And
it just kind of happened, and then it became my life. So I didn't beyond that.
Right.
I never. But yeah, I vividly remember specifically because I was not diabetic until 6th grade. So
maybe the 6th grade gave you diabetes.
I think it was, yeah. Although it was nice getting to go to the nurse office and evade class. I used it as a tool. I'm not going to front.
Hey, what would you say you were to get out?
I feel so bad admitting this. I just would, cause it was totally new to me and I knew I could leave the class.
Right.
If I said I didn't feel well. So I went to the nurse office, which in retrospect is terrible. And kind of, I don't know, makes me a crappy person.
You think so? I don't think a 12-year-old can be a crappy person for.
I don't know. What's ironic too is when I think about it, I would tell the nurse I feel low, and she always had these Donald Duck juice OJs in the fridge.
Yeah. And
she would have me test my blood, and I know for a fact in retrospect it wasn't always low, but she would still give me the OJ. So I'm always scratching my head when I think about that one because I'm like,
she was the juice dealer.
She gave me the juice even though I didn't need it, which would, do worse harm in the end. Maybe
it's more sinister than that. Maybe she just wanted to, she's like, look, I need this job, so I need to.
I think she felt bad and she was trying to be consoling, probably.
Take a juice, make you feel better. Well.
There's psychology wrapped around it too. She probably was aware I was going through stuff. I was newly diagnosed.
She was hanging with you a little.
I think she probably was humoring me, to be honest, even though it was a poor choice.
I'm thinking of 6th grade. My God, that was a long time ago. 6th grade, I had algebra. Now, if that's pretty common or not nowadays, I think they teach kids algebra in preschool, but I did not understand algebra. I was not good at it. I couldn't follow it. Mixing letters with numbers was not a good idea for me. And I tried for a while. And I finally came up with it. I was like, I can't do this. I have to drop this class so that I don't fail it. I'll go back into some general math class. I went up to the teacher, and I don't remember any of my teacher's names, but this man's name was Ted Combs. And I remember going up to him and saying, Mr. Combs, I got to get out of this class. I don't understand algebra. And he laughed and he said, yeah, I've seen your grades. We know you don't understand it. I was like, okay. See, this guy's on board, And he goes, but it's too late to drop this class. So you're just going to have to try harder. And I was like, I don't think that's going to work. So I tried for a little longer. And one day I just went up to him and I basically just made him a deal. And I said, listen, I will sit in the back of this class. I won't bother you. I won't cause you a problem. I am going to fail this class. I'm not going to hand in homework. I'm not going to do assignments in class. I'm not taking the test. Zeros. Fail. I'll go to summer school. And he said, okay. And that's what the education system used to be like. Just say, can you imagine now that happening?
No. That was 6th grade?
6th grade. I was 12.
That was very premeditated and forward to tell a teacher.
Oh, the only thing stopping me from ruling the world as an evil genius is I have a pretty big heart. Otherwise, I would just which reminds me that 2 years later, my guidance counselor said, Scott, we don't talk much, but you should consider becoming an attorney. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And he said, why? I said, well, 2 reasons. A, I don't want to do the same thing every day for the rest of my life. B, I'd be an attorney. And then I was like, I guess it's three things. And I said, and I think I'd be bad at it. And he's like, no, I think you'd be good at it. And I'm like, no, you're misunderstanding me. I was like, I think I'd be bad at it. And like, and he was like, oh, I'm like, I feel like there's like a sinister part of me that could take over and I could just be, like a bad guy in this story. I was like, I don't want to do that. So I just know that I could be a televangelist if I had the right heart for it, is what I'm saying, Shaun. I definitely
don't go that route.
Yeah, I definitely think I could get up on television and be like, just send me some money and everything will be fine. But
it could work. Yeah, I could see that.
I broke free of that when I was younger. But when I was younger, I was broke and I grew up kind of poorly and I knew I was bright and I always was afraid I'd like it's funny, I never had any thoughts about it, but I was always concerned for it not to happen to me. But anyway, that's a long way to go to say that I think your nurse, I think you're right. She was probably somewhere between trying to be kind to you and maybe not even understanding the whole thing completely. How long did it take you to understand
I think it was a mixture for sure.
Yeah. How long until you understood?
Man, I'm embarrassingly still figuring it out. So
I think that's good to admit, actually. Well, how did you manage back then? Because I've you and I have emailed back and forth for a long time now. I feel like.
Yeah, I guess it's been a while.
Yeah.
When I was diagnosed, it was like old school. I was put on NPH and regular.
Mm-hmm.
You had the vial. You had to like roll in your hand gently before you drew out into the syringe, and it was a pretty like set schedule where it was just like, here's how much you take and this is when you eat type of thing.
Yeah.
And man, looking back, like kids these days, I will say they are so lucky as far as information is concerned, because it's still scarce, ironically, but with the internet and with like communities like on Instagram, where there's like a thriving community, amazingly.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I had something like that when I was younger. That's all I can say, because information is like the vital component to put you on track. And, obviously you can get bad information too, but being able to actually interface with other people that live the same life also, mm-hmm. and see how they deal with their problems and what works good, what doesn't work, and things like that, is highly beneficial. And I've never had any of that when I was, younger, and I'm an old guy now.
So for decades, you were just, was it that long? You were just shooting at certain times and eating at certain times, and that was it?
Well, so I wasn't on NPH and regular for like an eternity. That's what they started me on. But okay. I remember moving into the rapids like as soon as they became available. Mm-hmm. And so after that, it was pretty much Lantus and Humalog, or Lantus and Novolog. And ironically, I'm still on the same type of insulin regimen, even though at this point, I'm so done with it, to be honest.
Well, okay. So I have here, I just did some quick Googling, and it looks like Humalog came out in 1996.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds about right.
That sounds about right. So that would have made you how old?
So 96, I was 16.
Okay. So you did the first way for about 4 years. Then
it wasn't forever.
Right. Yeah. And then into the faster acting stuff. But like you're saying, with no real information about how it worked. And is it even more, looking back, is it even more confusing to go from the just put it in and make sure you eat at the same time to this new insulin that basically works completely differently?
Are you referring to comparing like NPH and regular to Novolog and such?
Yeah. Like what was that transition like?
It was pretty seamless. I remember just it was the same type of thing. But the problem is that I had always, like, I never got an endo even. I still to this day don't have an endocrinologist.
You've never had one?
Dude, I've been my own endo since day one. The day I was diagnosed, I was pretty much like doing it myself, which is insane. And the more I think about it, and I did definitely, like, once I ironically started to learn more from a health scare that kind of put me on a different track about a year ago. And I started really digging in and saying, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I need to re-examine what I'm doing. I got so angry at my past because I realized that this entire time, like, I had not been given the proper tools. It's not like I'm a dummy. I'm a pretty smart dude, but I've never been given like the right tools to really succeed properly. So I'm honestly, in so many ways, lucky to be here. Wow. Lucky to still be healthy.
Yeah,
as far as I understand. And yeah, that's one thing I can say is I'm thankful that it didn't go a different route. Sure.
So you basically lived like 20, 25, 27 years with just winging it.
Yeah. It like the ebb and flow of like, I don't feel good. Let me check it. And the thing is I was always like pretty good about checking my blood. Mm-hmm. I've always been like, if I don't feel right, I'll check. And if it's high, I deal with it. I don't like sit on it and, watch it go crazy. I admittedly during my, teen through younger college years was a little rambunctious and did not take it as seriously as I should. Mm-hmm. Like I wanted to be in the moment more in certain events or occasions. And I would allow it to kind of go high when it shouldn't have. But most of the time, I had always been pretty good about it. Like I wish I could find out what my A1Cs were like when I was super young, because that information's gone now and I can't get a hold of it. But like the data I do have, I was always in, high 6s to like low or mid 5s. And so I was always kind of managing it, obviously. But
were you like when I think
sorry,
were you getting low a lot back then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I had a lot of experiences where, I got used to waking up with paramedics around me, and it was just like, this is just diabetes. This is, what it's like to be diabetic.
Shaun, that's really interesting. So somebody told you lower A1C better. So the number was lower. So you felt like you were doing well, which had to have meant that passing out and needing an ambulance was just part of it.
Well, I just was never like corrected, and I never had proper guidance, really.
Yeah.
Is the thing. Yeah. And so and sadly, my parents always did everything they knew they could do too, I think, but we were all uninformed. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but like, I am frustrated that I love my folks. They love me to death. They're amazing, but I wish they had searched out, like, finding an endocrinologist. I think they understood that we were in good hands, and arguably we were to a degree, but my needs were specific and in retrospect.
Yeah. And expectation. Sorry. No, I was just saying, if somebody sets expectations in a certain place and it feels like you're meeting them, and your parents might not have any reason to want to look into
exactly. And that's what I wanted to kind of, lay out is it's not like they weren't making sure I was okay. It's not like they were just like,
you
not
didn't live
caring
with the
about
dog.
my well-being.
Yeah. You weren't in the dog bed at night, right? They didn't like put the scraps from their plate on the floor and be like, here, Shaun, this is for you. No, you were being well cared for by people who were given a certain set of things to do, and they were doing them for you. And that was, it was
pretty much, like on one of your old shows, I remember you saying, trying to remember what you called it, like the kind of don't die toolbox or whatever.
Yeah. I tell you, doctors give advice that I consider to be do not die advice. It's just enough to keep you alive.
That's exactly what I was given. You know, I remember when when I was diagnosed, we basically kept my pediatrician till I think I was like 18, ironically. Maybe 16.
It's actually common nowadays to keep them longer. If you go,
was it really?
Yeah, if you go into college, they'll let
you
stay
me
with
out.
them. They kicked you out. It's like, Shaun, I don't let people come in here that can kick my ass. You got to go.
He was like, dude, you're so old. You gotta go to another doctor,
That's funny. But yeah, nowadays, like my kid's pediatrician will be happy to keep them until they're done college. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's,
I've never heard of such a thing. Yeah.
So you don't have to be looking for a doctor while you're going to college. So through college age.
Well, that's kind of good. I mean, if you can stick with somebody, the longer, the better, I figure.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so too. I agree. Well, I want to dig a little farther into this. So you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're just in that world. And by the way, you're not nearly the first or the 100th person to tell me that I just feel like waking up with a paramedic over top of me is part of having diabetes. It usually does come from people, I have to say, who have had type 1 for a couple of decades, usually, or longer. Like people who got that initial, like, hey, here's Humalog, this is new and exciting. It's so much better than the stuff you've been using. And wow, look at your meter. You can carry it with you now and stuff like that. Like in that space and time of diabetes, a lot of the people with expectations like that come from that space, I find. But it's amazing.
Yeah.
So what changed for you? Like what happened a year ago?
So I was progressively getting like stomach discomfort, and it wasn't like excuse me, I bumped the wire.
Yeah, you're fine. Don't worry.
So I was getting kind of like a cramping, but it wasn't like intense. And then it progressed into almost like it moved into my chest area, and I was starting to freak out, thinking like, am I potentially having a heart attack? And it kind of kept getting worse. One evening I could not get it to go away with taking antacids or Pepto or anything like that. And I just remember nothing made it better. And it was so intense that, I nervously submitted myself to the ER to go see if I was having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. I wasn't, apparently. And then I thought, well, maybe it's pancreatitis, and it wasn't that. My blood work came out okay. They did like a rib scan. Everything looked good. It's really strange. And so I stayed there till like 3 a.m. I came home, and then I saw my doctor, and he inferred that it was like severe GERD or something. And so he put me on a proton pump inhibitor for a bit. And that actually made me worse. I felt terrible on this. And I kept telling him, I think I might not need this. And I don't think I'm reacting properly to it. Mm-hmm. And it was really bad. And then eventually, I told him, I think I'm having an allergic reaction to this drug, because I'm feeling way worse. I was feeling like sick from it. And at first I thought I felt better, but then it progressed into an area where I was just, I knew something was wrong, and it was the drugs. So I told him, I'm not taking this anymore. So he kind of partially bickered with me on it at first, but then he decided that, patient knows best type of thing. Mm-hmm. And then I quit taking it, and I felt immediately better. Well,
you didn't have any stomach acid to help you with your food.
Yeah, yeah. It was intense. And so at that point, I had like a wake up call where I'm like, I already was like, for a while, progressively for about 10 years, cutting things out of my diet that just were junk. I grew up on the very standard American diet, and I, over the years, kept pulling things away and being more meticulous about how I eat, thinking about, eating healthier foods as much as possible, removing processed foods as much as possible. And at a certain point, I just figured I needed to examine my diet even more. I also had been pretty consistently a drinker for a long time, so I was concerned maybe it had something to do with alcohol. Mm-hmm. Not like a binge drinker or anything, but like I would definitely have at least a beer a night to take the edge off or whatever. I think in retrospect, I realize, ironically, I was probably kind of self-medicating with alcohol, not knowing it.
Self-medicating for what?
Stress? Dealing with the stressors of diabetes. I also am, a father to an amazing kid who's 9 now, but he's on the autism spectrum. He also has Tourette's, and it's a full-time job, you know? And so that kind of added to the equation when we had my son.
Well, that's not, I have to say, I just want to take a detour for a second and not too
Sure.
far off, but I see online, there are plenty of dads of kids with type 1, and drinking does seem to be their major way to deal with it. If I'm not
and it's no good, man.
Yeah. Wow. So
yeah.
So you come home at the end of the night, you're having a beer every day, you're having these pains, stomach, chest, and it just generally makes you feel like I need to do better for myself, especially because they didn't come up with anything, right?
Yeah, the crazy thing is they could not find anything, and I was quite determined to figure it out. So I had them schedule me for a full abdomen scan. They didn't find anything. The only thing that was left was like when they scope you, and I never got the scope done because I changed my diet, and I improved dramatically after I changed my diet.
Mm-hmm. I have to tell you that I've tried very hard over the last couple of years to remove processed foods, certain oils, and
I'm sorry, let me.
No, it's fine. That was hilarious, actually. And I feel much better. Last night, as an example, like everybody wanted something specific, and I made it, and then I had some, and I just didn't. I was like, oh. Later, I was like, I'm not going to eat that again. Like I shouldn't have eaten that. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't worth it. And when you're younger, man, your body can eat tin cans when you're younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You get into that's the problem, is you form habits. And
yeah,
I certainly formed a lot of bad ones when I was younger.
Right. Well, so in that process, then taking care of your diabetes just came along with eating better. You just were like, well, let me manage this more specifically as well.
Yeah. Well, so it's so weird because I'm like a completely different diabetic now. I mean, very much the same, but totally different in that, you know, in the past I was only testing on a meter. I finally acquired a CGM that changed everything for me. Yeah. Just having that data. And then, I found out about InPen amazingly through Instagram. It's so ironic how Instagram has informed me. It's so like, in retrospect, it's just silly to me because I've learned more from social media and podcasts such as yours than anything that my doctor could have given me.
Shaun, you're just old enough to understand when I tell you that I'm incredibly proud of this podcast. I think it's one of the better things I've done with my life. And yet, when I stand in front of someone and they're like, hey, what do you do? I'm like, well, I have a podcast. It feels stupid when I'm saying it. And if I was younger, it wouldn't. If I was 25 or 30 and I was like, oh, I have a podcast, that would seem realistic to me, but I am older. And when I say it, I understand anyway, how you feel when you're like, I can't believe that Instagram is where I get good information from. It just seems ridiculous.
I know.
From a certain generation. Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So you learned about InPen through there.
I think I stumbled on someone that was using it, and I was like, "Oh my God, you can take half units."
Shaun, you're pretty far behind, man.
I know. I'm a dinosaur now. It's so I almost didn't want to do the podcast because I was like, I'm going to embarrass myself so bad, and I'm just going to sound so uneducated.
No. Listen, I think that what you're doing is valuable because I believe that the other side of Instagram is that you usually only see from people who are doing really well. And I think more people lived the way you did than you think. And they
I think you're right.
Yeah, they don't speak up as often. So I'm glad for you to do this.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay. So you had diabetes for 27 years and you're like, wow, half units, game changer.
It really was. I'm not going to lie. So, but the thing is if I could jump around a lot here, but I'm absolutely still totally sick of not having enough precision And I never really even had, pump therapy pushed on me so much as just mentioned by my doctor, like, hey, you could get a pump.
Right.
And that was about it. Like, I was never informed on like, here's why you should get a pump. This is what a pump can do. When you have pumps, this is what you can benefit from,
Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is the first pre-mixed auto-injector of glucagon for very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Not only is Gvoke HypoPen simple to administer, but it's simple to learn more about. All you have to do is go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Stop right now and think. Ask yourself this question. Is the blood glucose meter I'm using or using on my child, is it the best one I could have? If you don't know the answer to that question, I'd like it if you could go to contournext.com/juicebox to check out the Contour Next 1 blood glucose meter. This meter is ultra accurate. It is super simple to use, fits very well in your hand or your pocket or your purse or your bag or wherever you need it to go. It has second chance test strips, right? Meaning you can hit the blood, not get enough or mess up a little bit, and go back and get more without wasting the test strip or ruining your accuracy. Now, I'm not saying that it needs a lot of blood, because it doesn't. I'm just saying if you shouldn't quite get enough the first time, like sometimes you're like squeezing and it won't come out. That's when that's really helpful. Anyway, that wasn't a very clean explanation, but you get what I'm saying. You can go back and get more blood without ruining your test strip or your accuracy. Oh, what letter was I leaving out there? Accuracy. Ooh, hello. contournext.com/juicebox. Head over and check it out. It's a terrific website. It's well designed. It'll be easy to get around and use. And you'll be able to learn all about the Contour Next 1 blood glucose meter. You may actually be eligible for a free meter. You have to see. Also, there's some test strip savings programs you can look into. What else? Oh, supplies might actually be cheaper in cash than they are through your insurance company. That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? There's only one way to find out. contournext.com/juicebox. Let's get back to Shaun.
When I was younger and it was kind of like, the only thing I was told was don't mess up or you'll have problems. And I was just fearful of screwing up all the time. I just tried really hard to not screw up as much as possible. But I also didn't know, like, I honestly, in retrospect, may have gone on a pump like much younger. If I was really aware of the benefit and I could see like how much I could improve control with one.
If only someone would have invented podcasts 25 years ago, you would have been saved. Well, you just said that you were told to just not mess up or else. Were they specific with you, or did you get the, like, you want your legs to fall off and your eyes to pop out? Was it
that type of thing?
That was really it, huh?
Yeah. So first my pediatrician was kind of on the same thing. And then, when I graduated out of him and went to a new doctor who was recommended to me, I was told was a specialist in diabetes, but not technically an endocrinologist. We only have like one endo in town, ironically. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that at the time, but my parents were referred to him, and we just went to him because he was highly recommended. And he's a great guy. I'm not gonna, I don't want to throw him under the bus or anything. He's a really nice guy, and he's always helped me out with financial issues that I've had along the way too.
Right.
He's always been like caring about, making things affordable, and I've always appreciated that. And he's always been, available via email if I need him or something like that. And he gets back quick. So I can't complain, but at the same time, it's not like I was getting guidance a whole lot either.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
he definitely made sure you had the insulin and the syringes. He just didn't.
That's about
tell
it,
you
man.
how to use it.
I mean, I hate, if he ever listens to this, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to say you're a bad dude.
You think, is he still practicing?
Yeah, I still see him.
A lot of doctors do listen to this.
You know, I don't want to have bad blood with my doctor, even though.
Can you imagine if you walked in as an adult and he looked at you and he was like, "Oh, so you're here for prescriptions from me?"
Yeah,
huh?
I suppose I overthink stuff a little too much.
It'll be fine.
Honest.
Well, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of doctors do listen to this podcast, but I was just interviewing someone yesterday who said they were in the office and doing much better, than they had been doing. And the doctor looks at her and goes, "Are you being bold with insulin?" And she goes, "Do you listen too?" And the guy goes, "I do." So
that's pretty cool.
It does happen.
Yeah.
I have to say too, and I'm going to, I'll say it here and I'll say it in a couple of other places. If you are one of those doctors and you're listening who recommends the podcast, if you would come on the show anonymously, I'd love to interview you. So reach out.
They should do that.
Yeah.
I would be impressed if someone stepped up to the plate and did that.
Yeah. You don't have to say your name or anything, where you're from or anything like that, but I would love to pick the brain of a person who is in that position and has said to another person, "Hey, there's a podcast I think you should listen to." I think that's kind of fascinating to me, actually.
That'd be brilliant. Yeah.
But yeah, you'll be all right. Listen, and here's a disclaimer for your guy. You're off the hook, man. Shaun thinks you're cool. Let it go. We're just trying to get out what happens when you're diagnosed a long time ago. And for reasons that, I think we've picked apart now a little bit. Your parents didn't look much farther into it, a little that you just didn't know. And then, you have a kid who's, you got a lot of responsibilities with your family. And, luckily, I guess your stomach started hurting. Seriously.
Yeah. It's so ironic because I tell people now like that. I'm so glad it happened to me because it really changed my life for the better. Like, I'm still trying to get to where I want to be at, but it put me on the right track for sure. And the irony about that is I've always very, very, very strongly not wanted to be that guy. I've always not wanted to be that guy that waits for, shit to hit the,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Until the fan's dirty to do something about it.
Yeah. I've seen that happen to too many people. And, I've always been adamant about not being one of those people, which is ironically, I guess, why I'm not blind yet or something. But, at the same time, I'm not going to pat myself on the back and say I'm like a perfect diabetic either.
No, it sounds to me like you were playing in the side of the pool that was more aggressive with the insulin. So while your issues were wrapped around lows, which might have helped you a little bit stay away from the higher ones, although you don't know, you didn't have a CGM. You could have been 400 and then 50, right? You have no idea.
That's another thing I think about all the time. And I'm actually very hypo unaware. And so probably because of going hypo so much.
Yeah. And the balancing.
Here's a funny thing, like just as a side tangent, just to inform you on like how uninformed like I was for very long. Like when I would give myself insulin, I would just say I took insulin. I didn't even know the word bolus.
Yeah, that's not uncommon though, Shaun.
Man, like stuff like that. I had to like cram for a test for like a year straight, pretty much is how it felt.
Learning diabetes.
Since last October. Yeah, it's been interesting. Yeah, because I'd be like, basal profile. I gotta search that now too. Like,
Do you find the Defining Diabetes episodes helpful?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Ironic stuff like pre-bolusing. It's not like I was unaware of what pre-bolusing was, but it helped put the idea of it a lot more front and center in a way that was way more expansive than I ever thought about it. Cause I was always just told, wait 15 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
And that it doesn't work that way, especially depending on activity level. And I've learned all this like in a very short span of time, ironically, how much hydration you have, how sensitive you are at the moment. Like all these things change and I would have never known, in the past.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get deep into a lot of things, and I'm basically a person who enjoys like living. Like I like being around people I care about. I like having a little bit of entertainment. I like being rested. I like, like watch my kids do things. Like I'm not a person who picks something and like digs super deeply into it all the time. I have the interest. I never have the motivation, but it wasn't hard to want to pick into the diabetes once I noticed it. But even in the beginning, for me, the first couple of years, I was just you. Like, you 18 months ago was me when Arden first had diabetes. I was just like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know why this is happening. The guy said 15 minutes. The lady said half an hour. I was doing everything like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until one day where I just started picking through it. And I found one little, like, it feels like if diabetes to me feels like I'm picking paint off a wall. Like I saw a little chip and I pulled it off and I was like, oh, I wonder what else is under there. And I just kind of kept pulling and pulling until I stood back and it, looked like that wall from Memento. And I was like, oh, I understand all this. And I know why this is important. Like, and maybe one part of my personality that helped was I don't like platitudes. They make me upset. Like, so saying something just to say it bothers me outside of diabetes as well. And so that statement, oh, that's just diabetes, which you said here earlier, which was part of your life and was an answer that I would get back all the time or find online, by the way, because as valuable as online is right now, up until a handful of years ago, nobody was really being that helpful. It was always very like aspirational stuff, which I'm not shitting on, I think is really valuable, but I mean, it never went farther than that. Nobody was ever like, hey, here's a pre-bolus broken down into why and how. No one was telling you that, except in maybe a couple of books. Like you'd have to give John Walsh credit for Pumping Insulin, that book, like where he broke things down there. I've never read it, but I hear from everybody how amazing it is. He's been around for a while, certainly a long while. I think he wrote that book with his wife. God, I think she's his wife. Anyway, maybe not. Hey, John, come on the show. That'd be nice. I'll ask you about it. But that digging through it, once I had dug through it and it made sense to me, then it felt really wrong not to tell somebody. Like, you know what I mean? Like I thought, like, well, now I know, somebody else needs to know too. I'll just start. I'll start telling people. That really, to me, is how. I'm not taking credit for the entirety of the space. I'm certainly not saying that, but people doing that is how you ended up moving forward. You know what I mean? And had no one ever done that, you probably would have just ridden this, this dumpster fire out to the end and been like, hey, and I
would argue no.
Oh, really? Tell me why.
I don't think I would have, I still don't think I would have gotten, see, I'm the type of person where I will read a book if it's really going to have some nuggets of information that'll help me out. But I really just want to get right to the meat and potatoes of what's going to help me get on track fast. And then I can dig into the details later. And that's what your podcast offers, in my opinion. It's like, well, I hope I'm not, glossing over all the other great things that it does offer. But for me, in my experience, it kind of just narrowed it, I put a bullseye on what I needed to hear right when I needed to hear it, instead of having to weed through a ton of other nonsense.
I'm glad.
And
you also said the most masculine thing I've ever heard in my life, which is I'll read a book if I have to. I was like
I do read. I actually enjoy reading.
It's a thing a guy would say, by the way.
I don't mean it like that.
No, I know you didn't. It's funny. No, but I hear what you're saying. I'm ready to hear it. Give it to me. Don't.
Yeah. Well, I find a lot of authors like to really kind of, it's almost like they need to fill the pages or something.
So people ask me to write a book about diabetes. It happens every once in a while. I'll get publishers will come and say, hey, could you turn your podcast into a book, or would you do this? And I'm always like, I don't know, man. Like, diabetes keeps changing. Make a book and then amend it and amend it and amend it. And then people have to read it. And what if they read one page and not the other page?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You would almost have to only live in the digital realm where you could just have it on online space where it could constantly change and it would still be a never-ending battle.
And not for nothing, but don't people read books a lot on tape? And so isn't that what this is? And then why do I need to be published about it? Like, it just seems, I mean, also I've been published before, I guess. So the excitement of that isn't, I know what that is. You know what I mean? Like, it is really nice, but I don't need to do it again. Kind of a feeling. But at the same time, I going back to what you said, I agree with you. Less is more. And
often it is.
And be direct, right? So tell them what they need to know. Don't, like, you're right. A book a lot of times is a lot of filler. And I mean, I could write an amazing book about managing your diabetes right now. It'd probably be about like 35 pages long. Like, that's a pamphlet, not a book.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing too, Shaun, no lie, is I just had this conversation with somebody over the weekend. I don't like the idea of you or anyone else listening having to pay for this. Like, I don't like that. So I don't think you should have to pay somebody $19.95 to know how to pre-bolus. I don't feel like I should, like, I am not a person who would put up a program online and be like, for just $60 a month, you can understand what I know about that. Like, that stuff, I don't like that at all. I'm trying not to be harsh about it because I know people who do this as a business model, and I don't think that all of them are, I don't think they're bad people, but it rubs me the wrong way. Like,
I could understand why. I mean, you're connected to it in such an intimate way too, being that your daughter's diabetic. I mean, you're giving something back to the community. That's,
it's such a very strong feeling for me that money should not be the access point to you understanding how protein affects your blood sugar, you know? Right. And so that's why I'm like, well, there are some people running around and like shit on people for like, you take ads. I'm like, take ads. I'm actively looking for ads. I'm like, I want the podcast to get made so that someone can find it. Like, Shaun, you found it a year ago and it's done for you what it's done, which is great. But the podcast has been alive for 5 years prior to that too. It helped other people who are long gone now. And I need to keep making the podcast so the next you finds the podcast, has these experiences, and moves on to a healthier situation. And I don't know. I'm an American, Shaun. Like, this is how things work. I build something popular. You buy an ad on it. I use your money to get my thing to people. Like, that's basically what I do. I take advertisers' money to make a podcast, and you use that podcast for what you use it for. Hopefully it works for you. If it does, you tell somebody else about it. That keeps the podcast moving forward. It's very transparent, and I make some money so that I can spend the time doing this. Like, you and I are talking right now. I feel like I'm going to die, just so you know. Like I really don't feel good. But this is my job now. So I do this today, and I will edit a show later today so that you have a podcast to listen to on Monday. And and that takes money, because if I didn't have money from the advertisers, I'm a stay-at-home dad, yes, but I still have to make some money. I'd have to go get a job. At the very least, I can't sit up here at this desk for 5 or 6 hours every day, which at this point is about what the podcast takes to run. And then go down to my wife and say, oh, don't worry, I'm helping people. It just, I don't know what people think, but that's not how the world works. So, and I don't want to take money from listeners. Trust me, there are people who come along all the time and they're like, hey, how many downloads do you have? And I tell them, and they're like, why don't you charge 89 cents for a download? You'd be wealthy. And I'm like, it seems wrong. Really does. Like, seems wrong to me. So, you'll know if that ever happens that all the advertisers are gone. If all of a sudden you're like, I don't know, back in 2021, he said he didn't want to do this, but now suddenly the podcast costs money. You'll know that I couldn't get an advertiser after that. And by the way, if I can't get an advertiser, it means no one's listening to the show. So you should probably move on anyway. Seriously, think about it. It's just common sense, right? I really am a little woozy, Shaun. My head's dancing around a little bit.
Hang in there, Scott.
Hang in there. Don't worry. I have clear instructions for people for how to release all of the recorded episodes if I should die prematurely. So this could be the end of it right here. We're like, and Shaun was the last one to ever talk to him. He said he doesn't read, and he's He just learned about diabetes after having it for 30 years.
Ouch.
Can you imagine if you were the last one? You'd be like, come on, can just one more come out after this, please?
That was a terrible summary of who Shaun is.
Yeah, no, you're not. Obviously, you're not. And I'd like to really, in this last kind of quarter of the show, like really summarize who you are. You're a person who a year ago figured out a ton of new stuff, and I want to hear about your life now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I eat completely different, and I approach food differently. Also, I also work out every day now, which is completely new to me.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, it was never a part of the culture of my house, even like, getting exercise in that type of way. We played ball. I played baseball. I played on soccer teams. I skateboarded growing up, like intensively,
right,
a lot. And after that, I just kind of stopped doing active stuff, but there was never like this idea of like, do this to take care of your diabetes also, but also do this because it'll just, keep your body in tune.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't a thing that my family did. And that's another area where I wish it was part of my routine early on, because it would have, I think just that even alone would have set me up for a lot more success.
I'm going to find out more about that. So how did you change your eating first?
So I had already been like toying with the idea of, cutting meat out of my diet for a while, because I would always notice I just didn't feel very awesome when I would eat it. And I enjoyed it. It's not like I didn't like eating it, but I always found like I would kind of feel sluggish. I would feel gross afterwards. And it wasn't like a blood sugar thing that was the concern so much. It was more just like I didn't enjoy how I felt eating it.
Yeah.
And so it kind of weirdly graduated me to going completely vegan weirdly. I was like, well, here's another thing I don't really want to have in my diet anymore. Let me see if I pull this out, if this will help. And then I kind of was like, well, I'm already pulling this out. Let me see. And then you go down a rabbit hole real easy once you start kind of just researching, different new ways to proceed with, diet. And I stumbled upon the Mastering Diabetes guys by complete happenstance. It wasn't, the name of their organization, or I don't know if they are an organization, but it's a team of two guys who are like real hardcore about, teaching about what causes insulin resistance and, informing you on how to reduce your insulin resistance via diet and exercise, essentially. Mm-hmm. But I didn't mean to go to them for diet advice or diabetes advice. I was actually Googling online how to figure out my insulin to carb ratio, and it came up. So I was like, oh, I'll check this out too, because for me, like, it's even the idea of the math of doing like insulin dosing was never something I really did until recently. And so I had periodically asked my doctor over the years, like, well, like, how do I figure this out? And he'd just be like, that's something you just get, it changes. Like, he would always kind of give me a wishy-washy answer. And then I think he honestly didn't know what to tell me.
Yeah.
And so he would, at the time we did have one endo in his practice, but I didn't see any purpose of going to one because I was always told I was on the right track and my A1C was in range and I'm doing good, So I just thought, like, well, what's the purpose of seeing an endo at that point? And so, but I also needed advice on like how to figure these things out and like have like a starting point. And so I would periodically Google these things over the years, not just up until a year ago. And I would always feel kind of dumbfounded because I wouldn't just find like exactly what I was looking for. So I would just keep doing what I was doing, which was go by the ebb and flow of how my blood sugars were and just, correct as needed.
Yeah.
And I finally found like one website that actually really did summarize how to get your insulin to carb ratio and your ISF. And I mean, I'm assuming it's accurate because I've been using this information for a year.
So I was like, now come to think of it, I just did find it on the internet. I'm not.
It was what is it? Should I not name a website on your show?
It doesn't matter to me unless I hate the person.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to remember. It was like, you know what? I don't remember anymore.
Seriously?
It's a popular. It's something. It's like diabetesinfo.net or something like that. I honestly can't remember what it was now.
You just.
But anyhow,
you probably just sent everybody to a porn site. So okay,
yeah, sorry guys. So anyhow, what I did was I started, doing the math with that the best I could. And it started kind of like getting me at least started with like having a truer idea of, how I was really dosing. Mm-hmm. And eventually I even like found a really cool app that lets you take a Excel spreadsheet that you can like, put math into, and then you can make the Excel into an app. And so I have a little app on my phone that I built essentially that uses that math that I call ratios. It's like right next to my InPen app, and I'll adjust it on the fly. Like I'll assess my 7-day report in InPen, and I'll go off of that, and I'll kind of keep changing my baseline insulin to carb and ISF from that. And then I'm still too much of a dummy to like know how to like mathematically quantify what my daytime and nighttime IC and ISF are. But I know just from the feel of how things go, like in the morning, I usually need a half to a unit more on top of recommendation. And at lunch, I'm about recommendation. And at dinner, I'm like a half unit to a unit less than recommendation often.
It's interesting.
Whatever that quantifies to. But so like in this little, app thing that I made, based on the information I found on that website, I set one field to my weight, another field to my bolus, my total bolus amount, another field to my total basal amount. And that gives me my, total daily dose. And then after that, it spits out the insulin to carb ratio. But, it's like their formula was like 2.6, times your weight divided by your total daily dose type of thing. And that's what I'm going off of. So hopefully that's correct.
If it's working for you, it's great.
It's been working, but I still feel like it always needs a little fine tuning. Like I feel like, so then there's the ISF, and I kind of built this into the app too, where I kind of play with the rule. The standard rule was always like 1800, but then I learned on that same website that I guess if you're a real 50-50 split, this is my understanding anyways. Like if your basal is about 50, your bolus is about 50, then you kind of apparently, and please don't quote me on this because I could be absolutely wrong, but that's more when you use 1800. But if your basal is less and your bolus is a little more, you kind of play with the rule and move it down to like, 1750 or 1700. So because of my ratio, excuse me, I have mine at like 1700. And then that kind of, helps me calculate out my ISF.
So I think Jenny just explained the 1800 rule on the podcast the other day. It's interesting that you're bringing it up right now, about how endos find those, your insulin sensitivity factor. But by the way, just so people know, whatever, I just checked the URL you said, and it is not where you.
Yeah, you know what? Here,
don't go. Don't go. I got my. That's all. But
I know that was wrong. It's diabetes net. Let me see. diabetesnet.com. Sorry about that.
Okay. So, the other one is just like a link farm.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just, it's one of those, somebody grabbed it because they thought it was a good URL that people might type in. It's funny.
So
I've never heard of the one.
Tangent there, man.
No, you're good. I appreciate you talking about it. It's funny. I've never seen this website before in my life.
I only found it because it was like the only place that really dug into insulin action times, and also what else? just like, figuring out your insulin to carb and all that, like in an understandable way that, my simple brain can figure out.
I'm glad you found something. Give it that. I seriously, I've never seen this website in my life. That's interesting.
Yeah, look, it almost looks fake.
You're not exactly selling it, Shaun, just so you know.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So, oh, it cracked me up for a second. So that's
just
really
take a dump on those guys' websites.
Yeah, no,
Sorry, Diabetes Net. You guys actually helped me out.
Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know.
For your trouble, I wanted to let you know that your site looks fake. No, I think that's cool that you figured stuff out like that. That you were just like, I need to know how to do this. No one's telling me. But Shaun, at this point, like, how come you haven't just found an endo that you really like? Do you just don't think it's necessary?
So I was always reassured I was doing a good job. And I was always
But do you think you were?
Sorry?
Do you think you were? Or do you think somebody was just telling you that who didn't know what they were talking about?
Well, naively at the time, I really did think I was doing well. Mm-hmm. And I guess I knew, like, I definitely knew for sure, I needed to cut back on my drinking at the time. I always knew that was like a big no-no, but like, I knew I needed to lose some weight at the time. I was getting heavier, mm-hmm. and I knew I needed to get more activity. But beyond stuff like that, I just thought, like, well, every time I would always be super nervous to get my labs, and then my labs would come back and I wouldn't have red flags. Everything looked good. Eventually I began to have really high cholesterol. And that was another one of the main reasons I changed my diet, which I totally forgot to mention, was for about maybe 5 years straight, I had really bad cholesterol. Okay. And I completely annihilated that going whole food plant-based.
I have to ask you a question. It's going to sound like I'm joking, but I'm not. You wake up, there's 3 paramedics standing over top of you. You think, oh, this is okay. Doctor said I'm doing good.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I never thought it was okay.
All right.
It always just made me feel like, well, I really messed up. And
I see. Okay.
Let me try not to repeat what got me there the last time.
So it felt like a fumble. Like I'm playing a great game. I just dropped the ball for a second.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess you could say it just got normalized because it happened throughout my life. Not like a ton, but enough to the point where it was just part of my life. Mm-hmm. Like I remember in high school, which was probably the first time it happened, I passed out on the quad, like on my way from one class to another. I had just gotten low.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it. And I passed out. I woke up with paramedics.
Mm-hmm.
I was told I even seized.
I used to, my whole goal was to, wait, what did Siri think I just said? My whole goal used to be just that Arden was never the kid who passed out at school. That was like the first way I used to think of it. But then that led me to, have her blood sugar higher than I wanted it to be. And then soon my goal morphed into how can I keep her blood sugar down but stable in a way where it won't just randomly drop anywhere. And then you just kept picking through things and until the insulin made more and more sense to me about how to use it, where to put it, where to take it away, when to be more aggressive and less aggressive and all that stuff. But yeah, it all started with that, like, oh God, I just don't want Arden to, like, I don't want the story to be that girl passed out at school. It was like my first thought when she was little. You testing your blood sugar now?
I'm actually giving a bolus because I blew it when I kind of heavy handed my breakfast, and I ended up kind of going low right before the podcast. And I was like, well, I don't want to go low during the podcast.
I do find myself wondering how often people are like, I really have to do a good job with my blood sugar while I'm on the show.
I don't know. I did feel a little pressured. I actually kind of blew it. So I ate a whole persimmon, which persimmons are that's like 20 grams.
And then you went up.
Yeah, just a little too much. So
I did an interesting interview with an older person the other day, who has gastroparesis on top of, other stuff. And she got low during the show. And we kept going. It was really interesting. Like, she treated a low, it didn't come up. She treated it again. her diabetes alert dog started bothering her. It was really, I'm like, we can stop. And she's like, no, it's okay. She's like, keep going. And I was like, okay. So we kept going, and it was interesting. It really was. I felt like I was watching it happen to my daughter, but through headphones, kind of a thing. It was,
I often wonder if that's something that it may be linked to the stomach issues that I was having, because I didn't know about that either, and I had just learned about that recently, the gastroparesis.
Well, I think the very basic, I'm obviously not a doctor, but if your food is digesting the way you expect it to, you're not having any other neuropathy issues or nerve issues?
So that was another reason that I definitely was like, I need to get my act together. Was I was, when I go to sleep, I started getting to the point where I was worried I was beginning to experience neuropathy, and I would tell my doc, like, hey, is this neuropathy? I think I might have it, maybe. And he would kind of quiz me on it, and then he'd tell me, no, that's not really neuropathy. So I don't know if he's just,
dude, where are you going?
Honestly, man,
what public state do you live in? You're in California, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in California.
That seems like a place where they have doctors.
Yeah, we got them. They exist.
Let me just give you the neuropathy quiz real quick. Batman or Superman, Shaun? Batman.
Bubblegum.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Let's get out of here, you crazy kid. How many times did the ambulance come this year? Twice? Doing great, buddy.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly debate if I do. If I do, it's extremely minor. But like, to give you an example, I hate the weight of the sheets on my toes. If my toes are like being pulled down by the like the weight of the comforter too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that really like qualifies as neuropathy, to be honest.
Have you had that your whole life, or just more recently?
More into my 30s.
Huh.
Yeah. And so I always like, that was what started me being all paranoid about it.
Do you have any other tactile issues? The things you don't like touching you, or sounds or tastes, like things, textures in your mouth, anything like weird like that?
Taste? Really?
Yeah, just like stuff that throws you way off, or you don't like the feeling of something in your mouth, or you can't touch.
No, not
surfaces.
like that. No.
Okay.
No. But like like if I get a high blood sugar, and I think this is more a symptom of hyperglycemia, but like I will experience, like in my sinuses will feel like dry and almost like I'm smelling metal sometimes. And that drives me nuts.
Smelling metal.
Like I will almost think like, that's odd, just because my sinuses always seem a little off.
Is your blood sugar a certain way when you smell metal? High?
It could be like, so for me, like here's a tidbit, like no, it's not like that high, but like if it's just maybe going up, but like if I'm even like above 130 these days, I hate it. Like I can't stand it. Like I have to make sure that like, it's one of the things that I think in general always kind of kept me taking care of myself pretty well, is that I absolutely despise the way it feels like to be terribly out of range anyways, even though I admittedly I was worse about it when I was younger.
Well, I think that's, listen, I'm sorry if you don't feel well, but I think it's great that because what that tells me is that you've gotten your blood sugar so stable and in a good range that you can tell now when things aren't the way they're supposed to be. I would definitely say that time and range was completely foreign to me when, not very long ago. I mean, I knew what time and range was, but I never understood the emphasis of it. I never understood like how vital that is compared to other things, ironically. Yeah. Because like now, I can probably say like, my standard deviation, which I also had no idea what that was, ranges anywhere from like 20 to 28 often on an average basis, as long as I have my basal locked down, which I'm really proud of, because I can only imagine it must have been complete garbage in the past, Yeah, dude, I can't imagine either, because you said you lost your data, but I was thinking that the way you were going, especially from such a young age on your own, like your A1Cs must have been pretty bonkers at some points.
I would think. Yeah. And I mean, we ate like typical, regular stuff, go to pizza, I'd have like 3 slices type of thing.
So, and to think about that now, like if you had 3 slices of pizza now, how much insulin would that take?
Well, so here's the weird thing is since going vegan, my insulin needs dramatically dropped, like so much. And also what I've learned is removing or reducing fats as much as possible dramatically improves my sensitivity, like beyond measure, to the point where I will have problems with hypos quite frequently if I get a lot of activity. Plus I've eaten very lean that day.
Yeah, right. Well, keeping the fat out of your diet helps the food to digest more quickly and get through you and not be.
Yeah. And it builds insulin resistance, which I never understood until now, so
the fat in your diet builds insulin resistance. So I would think of it as the fat in your diet is slowing digestion down, which keeps the food in your system longer, impacting your blood sugar. I don't know that I call that a resistance to insulin. It seems like a need for insulin to me, but it might just be semantics. I'm not sure exactly how you're thinking.
No, well, that's correct in like the immediate, I think. But when you're, say, consuming ample amounts of like, animal protein that also is bundled with cholesterol and, saturated fats even, or you're also eating processed foods that have saturated fats or dairy products that have a ton, which dairy typically has a lot of saturated fat. And you're eating that consistently in the immediate, yes, it's like slowing your digestion and changing your insulin needs and kind of stretching them out in awkward, more dynamic ways.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, what were you going to ask?
I was just going to say it's really kind of fascinating because I've been talking to people about how they eat more recently. Excuse me. And that same argument made by a vegan or by somebody eating carnivore, they're making the same claim about eating a certain way. And
I know I've heard this.
And each person's argument is poo-pooed by the other side. It's very interesting. Like to see.
I'm not trying to. Like,
no, don't,
honestly,
dude. No,
like,
I understand.
Go on. Sorry.
Oh, I wasn't saying you were starting some like turf war about eating. I'm just kind of, it's fascinating that it can work really well for one person. Like eating the way you're eating obviously is doing a great thing for you. And it's really fantastic. And then I've had people on here who are like, I just eat meat, and they have the exact same outcomes. I always wonder why they have opinions about the opposite way of eating. That's the part I'm always confused about. I'm like, why does it matter to you if this is working for you and that's working for them?
Yeah.
Who cares? But
I don't personally. I care more about just, people can eat however they want to eat. Yeah. But when it comes to how I consume food, in anything really, I want to know, is there science backing these days anyways? When I approach eating food, I want to know, is there like, sound science backing the way that I'm choosing to eat? And does it make sense at all? Yeah. Aside from pleasure, does it make sense that I'm cutting this out of my diet? No, or putting this back in? And there's a lot of evidence supporting, at least to my understanding, removing animal products and dairy because of, because like one of the number one things that diabetics die from is, heart attack or basically cardiovascular related issues.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it's one of the number one things. And when you consume a lot of high saturated fat foods, and you're contributing to that essentially. So
I have 2 separate thoughts here. I'm going to lose one of them if I don't get it out of my head. I think I am really woozy. Shit. What was the first thing I was going to say? Damn it. Oh, I loved what you said earlier about the way I'm eating now fits me. Like in the end, like that's my opinion of eating. Like everyone's body's going to be different to some degree.
Yeah, totally.
You got to eat something that works for you. That I don't think it would matter what it is. It needs to work for you on all levels. And the other thing I wanted to say is, while I'm not making the point that being unhealthy is good for your heart, I am saying that a lot of people with diabetes die from cardiovascular issues because their uncontrolled blood sugars cause rips and tears in arteries that then repair themselves and eventually clog arteries and stop blood flow and give them a heart attack. So not that having a healthy heart otherwise isn't really important, but I don't want to leave anybody with the idea that if you just eat a bunch of stuff that's bad for your heart, that you're automatically going to have a heart attack because you have diabetes. In my understanding, that has got a lot to do with your blood sugar management. You're keeping a good time and range, not fluctuating up and down all the time. That sort of stuff is
absolutely
really important.
I mean, no matter how you eat, if you're not, I mean, as a type 1, if you're not controlling it at the same time, I mean that. Yeah.
Well, you don't want to compound
for complications.
Right, you don't want to compound it by doing 2 things at the same time.
Right.
Right. It's really, I don't know. I find the whole thing kind of fascinating. I feel way better when I eat more meat and less carbs. So like that works better for me. A lot of like eggs, turkey, chicken, some beef, like that whole like leaning in that direction leads me to a better day. It's fascinating. And that's why when you said earlier, like that really wasn't good for you, I was like, oh, that's really interesting how people are so different, it's really cool actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really just trying to kind of plan out being able to be here, man. I just want to stick around. And so, it's just, for me, it's the same thing as like cutting toxins out of, the things that I consume or whatever it is.
Keeping crap out of your body that your body doesn't want there. And longevity, by the way, I'm glad you said that, because in the end, that's really what we're all talking about. It's about, it's about staying here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, it just makes sense to me. I mean, if there's people out there that want to eat nothing but Slim Jims and they have a standard deviation of 15 or something, awesome, dude. I mean, I hope that works out for you in the end, but
I got to say, I don't think Slim Jims is exactly what we're talking about.
Let's go with Slim Jim.
Yeah. I think that guy was on a little while ago, and I think he made the point at some point that when he said I'm talking about eating meat, like he wasn't talking about like hot dogs and like that doesn't count.
No, it was a bad. Sorry, it was
no. I don't think it's a bad thing, because I do think people can get confused and think, oh, I'm very I do this way. I yesterday I had ring bologna. Yeah, that's not the same thing as maybe a well prepared, I don't know, well raised piece of meat. Like, I don't think they're commiserate in the same, because you're still processing the food then when you're making hot dogs or making stuff like that. Just because there's no carbs in them doesn't make them not processed. Anyway, I had no idea we were going to talk about
what I find with food is that people are very attached to the way that they eat. And so, I mean, most people will very vehemently argue whatever it is in the way that they eat,
it's funny. I take your point because I've seen it too, but I sort of think of it as it's more of an internet thing.
It's become that for sure.
Yeah. Meaning if you put 10 people in a room and gave them, and we were all sitting around talking and somebody said, hey, I'm eating vegan. It's been really good for me. I don't think someone across the room would stand up and go, you're wrong. I think people would just be like, oh, wow, Shaun's a vegan. That's cool. And let it go. I think it becomes something you attach your, it's not
like an identity component these days.
It's not unlike other things you see online where people are virtue signaling, right? They want to make sure that that they are on the right side of this argument, whatever the argument, or forget food for a minute, whatever the argument is. I know better, and I want to make sure everyone knows that I know better. I don't know what psychological reason that is. That I don't know how that helps you, but it seems very important to people.
I think it's I guess it's like a kind of a dominance thing potentially. I don't know.
I always thought of it as currency.
But, yeah, I would probably say that more.
Yeah,
it's
and then you get a group to accept you, and then you have community, right? Because you're against it and I'm against it.
You get adoration for the way that you think.
You can do it with politics. You can do it with food. You can do it with a lot of different things. Like, oh, I'm on the side of this because good reasons. Like I've never heard anybody argue one side of anything and not come forward with a ton of good, of good, reasonable ideas. Like nobody says, you know what I mean? Like one side doesn't say, I'm for good eating. And this is what good eating looks like. And the other side's like, I eat paper and weeds I find in the yard. And I smoke black tar heroin. And I'm healthy too. God. And I want to make my argument about being healthy now. Like nobody ever does that. Like everybody thinks because they're doing it in a way that's obviously working for them. Mm-hmm. And so then you get that feeling of like, I need to tell other people. Like I just talked about it earlier, right? Like I learned how to use insulin and I wanted to tell other people because I saw how it saved my daughter.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. And
I think when you feel like you're on the right track, you do want to inform people like, hey man, this is doing a big thing for me.
Yeah.
You should try it out too, type of thing. I mean, I think in that sense, it's quite harmless if you're just trying to help people. It's when it becomes, like
those are the fringes.
You kind of you get on a soapbox and you kind of have to tell people like this is the way. I think when you get to that degree, then you've kind of crossed a line at a potential.
Oh no. Yeah, there are fringes to everything. So I think most people are pretty. I'm going to use a word that sounds political, but it's not. But I think most people are moderate and they're thinking about most things. Right. And there's some people that lean in different directions. I'm not saying left or right. I'm saying like, a little more vegan. I'm a little more beefy. I'm a little more about, I don't eat processed foods. And some people are like, screw you. I'm going to have a Twinkie, but I learned how to bolus for it. Like everybody's got their own kind of like vibe. The people who scream and yell, I always think of as being on the, as far away from the center as possible. Like they're
probably the most undecided in the end too, ironically, I would think.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I just know they are very good at yelling.
Maybe they're not that confident in themselves after all, and they feel like they need to be louder about it. Yeah. But who knows?
I have no idea. And in the meantime, and super sincerely, I think that's fine. If you're out on the fringe and you don't really relate to anything anyone's saying and you feel passionately about it and you yell, I've never looked at one of those people and thought, oh my God, they have no right to be, I don't care. Like, I think it's great if everybody says what they think. So
yeah, you should, man.
Yeah, let's go with me. That's all. Shaun, this was good. I probably used up every ounce of energy I have today to talk to you, and I think it was well worth it, but it's possible I'm going to stop this recording and crash and not wake up for a couple of hours. Did we not get to anything you wanted to talk about?
There's so much more I could say, but I'm going to let you go, man. It sounds like you're not doing well.
No. Listen, I'm just, I'm a little euphoric at this point. Like things are coming back around. I'm seeing colors and no, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, did you have anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to? Tell me if we did. I wouldn't ask if I didn't want to know.
Not really. Okay. It was a good chat though, Scott.
I had a good time. Did you really have fun?
Yeah, man. I'm glad you had me on.
Oh, I was thrilled to have you. I was glad to hear from you. I think it's amazing as an adult for you to have found, you moved so far from where you started in a year. Like your first emails were like, they had panic in them almost. It was like someone showed you a completely different world that you didn't know existed and you were excited to find out about it. And
absolutely. Yeah.
It's really cool to see how much you've like absorbed on the way. Do you think you're going to get a pump?
So I actually tried to like 6 months ago. And then it was a weird thing where I was told by the doctor's office that my insurance had swatted it down. But then I left it alone because I was bummed about it. And I figured, well, I'm not going to get it then. And then I think, I don't know if it was like 3 months ago or so, I had called my insurance to check in again just to see like, how much is it going to am I going to be covered on these? And they are apparently going to cover it. So I don't know if there was a miscommunication or what, but I guess I could have already been on one like 6 months ago.
Oh, no kidding. Well, I hope you get what you want. I have to tell you that
I'm a little terrified of trying to figure out how to make I'm so used to like low tech. So I do need guidance on it. That's the only thing is I really want to feel like I'm making at least an informed starting point with one.
Well, you know your settings, right? Like you just you do. Like
no,
come on. How much basal
No,
insulin
man.
do you use in a day?
So here, let me look at.
I'll set your pump up right now. You don't
no,
even have one.
My bad. I don't even need to look that up. So I take currently I'm taking 9 units of Lantus,
Okay.
which just as a side note, man, I absolutely loathe Lantus these days. Like it was working for me quite well. And then as I leaned out and lost weight and became more sensitive and needed almost like half units, which I can't administer with those Solo Stars. It's just a pain in the butt.
Okay. Well, listen.
It has a terrible peak too, like Jenny noted in one of the podcasts.
Yeah.
It has a terrible peak that it will always wake me up at like 2 a.m. It drives me insane. And the thing is if I'm like, it's a very like hair trigger type of insulin. So if I take like 7 units at night and 2 a.m, I get an even keel through the day. And my blood sugars look amazing and my graph looks quite flat overall.
Okay.
But I'll go hypo at night, which I don't want, obviously. So then if I back off on my Lantus split dose and I go to 6, and then I swap that unit over into the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm doing like 6 and 3. All my night will look better, but then it completely takes a dump on my day, like to the point where I no longer have any coverage for Dom phenomenon at all. My AM cortisol spike is like a sledgehammer. I need like immense amounts of bolus insulin throughout the day for every meal.
Shaun, you're going to love a pump.
It's tough, man. And so I'm just sick of that. And I'm honestly, the only thing I'm weary about with the pump is I'm so damn thin now. I'm worried about like trying to put one on my legs.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you'd be able to find places. I've seen thinner people than you wear them. Listen, your basal is going to start out around 0.375, 0.35, like somewhere around there an hour. You probably need a little more. It sounds like, in the morning than you'll need, overnight, and you'll make a couple of, see, I think the way you're thinking about all this really would lend to digging deeper and
I honestly want to loop. Like I would love to start looping.
Okay.
That sounds amazing.
Do that.
But dude, my iMac is like seriously antiquated, and from my research, I don't think I can build the app or whatever.
Yeah, you might not be able to
with my computer, and dude, we're scraping by right now, so I can't really get a new computer.
What pump are you thinking about?
I really never was interested in pumps when I was younger, primarily because of the tubing.
Uh-huh.
And so when I saw Omnipod hit the market before I even knew about your podcast, I thought it was intriguing, but I didn't learn much about it. Mm-hmm. It was kind of the same thing with like the Dexcom, where I was watching it. I was always watching Diabetes Tech, but I was always unimpressed, to be honest. Like I remember seeing like the earlier Dexcoms and just being like, "Ugh, the applicator does not look fun," and then when the 6 came out, I was like, I can mess with that, So then the more I listened to the podcast and heard you guys kind of pitching it too, I thought, well, it actually doesn't sound that bad. I saw a lot of people on IG using it, and it actually looked quite painless. And that was one of the best things I ever did for myself, was getting the Dexcom.
Yeah, no,
to be honest.
I have to be honest, either applicator works fine. Like the auto one with the G6 is great, but I didn't have any trouble putting it on with the G5 and before. I get that it looked more.
It was intimidating for sure, coming from, an old head like me.
Well, you're not the only one who thought about it that way either. I don't think that they made that applicator for fun. I think they made it because it was an impediment for a lot of people to try.
Yeah, it looked like a science experiment, but
just pulled up on the ring and pushed down at the thing at the same time. Just thank you, it's all done. I remember doing. Oh my god, I've done so many of them.
So anyhow, I would very likely, if I'm going to go pump at all, go on the Omnipod, just because, to my knowledge, it's the only one of its kind.
So your play, in my opinion, then, is you wait until 2021 and you try the Omnipod 5, the Horizon. And
is that when that drops?
It'll be in the, from what I understand, it should be in the first half of 2021. You won't need a computer, and the really cool thing about it is that the algorithm will be burned baked right into the pod itself, so you don't even need to be near your phone for it to work.
I'm definitely very interested in that. I'm just more weary of like making user error with programming, because I want to feel like I'm starting on a like a safe starting point with it.
Well, you will.
And I'm a smart dude. I can figure it out from there on out.
Yeah.
But like, I do feel like I need a little guidance in that department.
No, I understand.
I sadly don't think I'm going to get it from my doctor.
Well, I agree with you. I think that algorithms in general, as they're coming into the market, I think one of the problems they're having is the support of how to set them up. But really, you're just looking to get your basal right, your sensitivity close, and then you'll see what happens. You can move it around a little bit till you find it.
I know you're trying to go, but humor me real quick. You can program your basal to like build around your needs through the day, correct?
Yeah, man, you could have 0.35 overnight for a couple of hours, and then say you're going to wake up every day at 7 and you get some feet on the floor, some kind of a rise around 7:30. You could have your basal go up to 0.4, 0.45 at 6 a.m. so that it's built up for when you wake up in the morning. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know exactly when that happens now too. And I would have never known it without, seeing my data from the CGM.
No, 100%. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. And if you look, if you get low every day, blah, 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 you can change it. If you have a meal that you eat and you get higher from this meal, but it doesn't happen with any other meal, you could like do a temp basal increase. Like you can, I don't know.
See, this stuff that's so foreign to me. That's why I'd be like a little intimidated. That was the only thing.
Just think of it this way. Think of having your Lantus on a dimmer switch, like a light. And you being able to like turn it up or turn it down when your needs, and you can automate the light so it happens at certain times. A little stronger,
that's awesome.
A little weaker. That's all it is. It's having control over your basal insulin. I think that's still the biggest deal about a pump, and that's a side of algorithms, because in algorithms, there won't be temp basal increases and decreases because the algorithm's going to do that kind of stuff for you. But yeah, I mean, just on a regular, if you just got a regular old Omnipod right now, you'd have control over all that stuff.
That's what I was going to get, and then I don't know, I got lost in the ether, and I just didn't get it.
Yeah, I think if you I mean, it's November now. I mean, I don't really know when it's going to come out, but if you've got the okay to do it, try the Omnipod now, learn how to use it kind of more manually the way it is set up now, and then make your decision if you want to go into the algorithm when it's available.
What is the minimum amount of insulin that you put into the pod?
80, I think, 70 or 80. I haven't used the minimum amount in a while, but you'll use
like my.
Good.
I'm just doing the math real quick because I use about. Oh, that'll be about right.
Yeah.
Although I'm assuming it would be way less actually, because you're only using one insulin.
Well,
because
wouldn't it be more? On. Wouldn't it be more because you're going to use point? What did I just say?
Well, I was looking at my total daily dose, like basal plus bolus type of thing, and at the moment I'm at 24.4.
Oh, you're going to need more than 80 then, because you're going to use 27 units at a minimum, I would think, for just your basal. And then 24 times 3, 72 plus 27. Yeah, you're going to probably use about 100 units every 3 days.
Okay, because my concern too was like I don't want to waste insulin.
Sure.
But I'm very naive to it because I don't know like how much I'd actually be using, and I just know I'm using a dramatically less amount than I used to use.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. The pod holds 200 units. At its maximum, it holds a minimum of 85. You won't waste any. You're going to use more than 85 every 3 days.
What rapid do you guys do?
Arden uses a Pedra.
See, I've never experimented with any other analogs beyond Novolog and Humalog, which are essentially the same thing.
Yeah, we've used Novolog. I found it to it peaked like too harshly for Arden, and she'd crash a lot afterwards. And we tried,
and I experienced that myself, which is kind of, that was why I want to ask.
Yeah. So then we tried a Pedra. I find a Pedra to work very predictably and smoothly. Like I know how a Pedra works after using it for so many years, and I'm good at using it. But Arden tried Fiasp recently, and that was really good. I caught that episode. You said it stung, huh? Yeah, but it didn't work for her physiology. But the way it worked specifically was good. Like we didn't have to pre-bolus as long. We could be she could like have food that was I don't know how to put it, like stronger carb food, because it was working more quickly. We weren't seeing as many like spikes. I think if I could have kept her on it for a long time, I actually think I could have brought her A1C down a little farther. And I think that her stable times would have been more stable. It worked really well. It just burned and bruised her, and she just couldn't use it. Yeah.
So does a Pedra have the same type of action, or is it different?
A Pedra doesn't. The way I used to explain a Pedra to people is that I haven't seen double arrows up or down, and I don't really see single arrows up or down ever on a Pedra. So,
I mean, that could be very user driven, but
yeah, I'm good at it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I was good at it when I had Novolog, and it didn't matter. I wasn't as good with Novolog as I am with a Pedra.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's got like a different slope then.
I don't know, dude. I don't know what it is, but Novolog felt like it went in, took forever to work, and then worked really, really intensely, and then stopped. And that's my experience.
I mean, I've pretty much used Novolog my entire life. I'm just kind of used to it, and it can definitely be a pain in the butt.
Fiasp went in, started working right away, and felt like it was out of her system sooner.
Really?
Yeah. And a Pedra.
See, I wish we talked about this, and instead of me talking about my mess ups all the time, I wish we talked about this stuff before.
We are talking about it. Don't worry. I got a second one. We're good.
I don't want to keep you, man.
No, I still haven't thanked you. You do this thing that I don't know that you realize is a thing for me, but when you really like an episode, you share it on Instagram. And
oh yeah, I'm happy to share them.
No, but it's not because that's not what I'm saying. I'm happy you're sharing them too, but you're one of the people that when I see you share it, I feel like, oh, because you don't blindly share everything. So I know when I did a good job because you shared the episode. Like, that's one of the ways I tell how I'm doing.
I would not use Shaun as a barometer, but I appreciate that.
Shaun is not a good barometer?
No.
Is that the title of this episode?
I'll take the pat on the back. I dig it.
You're just one of my little metrics I use. So, and one day you'll be gone. I hate to say it like this. One day you won't be, and then and I'll find somebody else. But you're a person that I identified as, like, Shaun doesn't just like throw kudos at me, like I'm at a wedding and he's got a bag of rice. He's you're stingy with your praise.
Yeah, I am a little bit.
Yeah, no, dude,
it's interesting that you would notice that.
God damn right I did. How do you think I make this podcast popular? I know what's going on. Yeah, no, but you're one of my people. Like, I'm like, when you're like, this was a good episode, I'm like, damn, that must have been good. Gosh.
See, I'm the same way with music. I'm absolutely the same way with music. Like, I won't just like pat artists on the back just because, they want the adoration. I actually come from a music background, and I think a lot of young kids that wanted to make music with me thought either I was amazing because they looked up to me, or they probably thought I was a big ass.
Over the last year or two, I can't tell people enough about Gary Clark Jr. But
he's amazing.
Yeah, but I don't spend a lot of time.
I'm a big fan, actually.
Yeah. I don't tell a lot of people about my music likes. I don't overly share my music interests, but I'd go, if the world ever gets right again, I want to see Gary Clark play live. And the last person,
I think he'd be amazing to see live, man.
Yeah, the last person I made the effort to see live was Yo-Yo Ma. I don't go to a lot of live music, but I want to see Gary Clark play live somewhere.
Man, I haven't been to a show for way too long. I used to go all the time.
Yeah, you got old, man. I was telling
I know, it's so sad.
I told my daughter the other day, I said the best live show from just performance I was ever at was Guns N' Roses. I said,
no, that would be fun.
Axl Rose ran, and you're thinking, you got to think of Axl Rose as, like not the old man that he is now, but he ran around that stage for 3 hours, 100 miles an hour, and sang the entire time. It was the most impressive thing I've ever seen. He was really impressive. I thought Metallica was really great live.
I could never get into Metallica, but I know everyone seems to love Metallica.
They were very good live. You know who else was really good live? Sting, of all things.
Sting. You saw Sting?
Dude, yeah, he was really good live. I saw him at an outdoor concert with Kelly when we were really young. Actually, one of Sting's songs, a remake he does, is my wedding song. So, but yeah, he was really good. But I've seen some acts. Oh, do you know who was great live? The Black Crowes.
Really?
I sat through a Heart concert to watch the Black Crowes open for Heart. And
That's kind of funny.
I don't mean to insult anybody who likes Heart, but that Barracuda song gives me what the kids call douche chills. It's really bad music, and for me at least. But yeah, I lived through an entire Heart concert so I could see the Black Crowes open for them. But you know, and Alyssa told me I should come to Germany and hear her play when she was on the other day. So,
oh, is that where she was? She's actually in Germany.
She was talking about this one concert hall that I think she said it was in Germany, that she said it's just an amazing place to see her play.
That was a really, really cool episode. I liked that one.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I love the cello. So, by the time this comes out, I should have another, I can tell you now because nobody will hear it. I think I got hey everyone, jumping in for a second here. I'm sorry. I can't tell you who I got yet. I'm still working on it. It's taken a long time. And then somebody just like during the broadcast, they're like, he has type 1 diabetes. So I've been trying to get him on the podcast since then. I can never get any traction on getting him on. And I did something for a charity the other day. And when we got done, the person was like, hey, this was great. Thank you. If you ever need anything, let me know. And who was playing at the charity event. And I said, if you give me the address, the email address of his manager, we're even. And she's like, all right, here it is. So I think I got him. I'm excited. I think that's, I don't know. I have a very strange mix of,
no, you know what? That's pretty cool. I think it's interesting when you learn, how music touches people, and music is such a like amazing component of our lives, even if we don't realize it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been surrounded by it since I was a kid, and I can't imagine a life without music.
What kind of music did you play when you were playing?
I'm sorry, I played?
Yeah.
Or that I was just around?
No, I thought you said you had played music for you were in
bands.
Well,
so I come from more of a like hip hop production background.
Okay.
Engineering, mixing, and I ironically have a bachelor's in recording arts, even though I learned everything on my own. It's more just a fancy piece of paper on the wall. But I've always loved being able to like create something from scratch with friends. And I've kind of lived and breathed hip hop since I was a little kid. I had like, Fat Boys on cassette. So, it's just always been a part of my life. My dad actually managed Tower Records for 30 plus years.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so I grew up in a record store. It was amazing.
Well, let me measure my rap likes and then we can get out of here. I like Dave East a lot. Do you know him?
See, I'm kind of an old school head, even though I do listen. I try to tune into newer stuff.
Right.
I'm probably gonna kind of square myself out a bit, but I can't really dig a lot of the new stuff these days, even though some of it I kind of see where they're going with it.
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
I'm not familiar with that guy, but what happened to me, in my opinion, along the way is I started just noticing too much redundancy in music, and it made me kind of like not care about a lot of the new stuff coming out. It felt so predictable during the 90s. And I hate to, pitch up the 90s like a lot of people do and say it was the golden era or whatever, but there was a lot of push to be like a unique version of yourself, at least in hip hop. But I think across the board, really. And there was the dynamic between record labels was different. I think it's all for the better these days, to be honest, because there's more, even though there's saturation and there's too much out there, there's a lot more organic stuff being created these days, which is also great.
Yeah, at least the artists have control of their stuff for the most part.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it just goes to show you really didn't need those labels in the first place, and they were just kind of milking you. But at the same time, they did become sort of like a vessel to put people into more people's ears. And I think that was one thing that you can't deny about certain record labels. There was good labels along the way too, that they really grew artists.
Yeah. Well, they had distribution channels too that didn't exist until the internet. Really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And distribution is vital. Like if you don't have a distribution, you're back when it was hard copy, you weren't going to get into anybody's household. And so that was a big deal. And I think that's part of what played into being a very original version of yourself with music back then. Was it was like, there was way more push to create something that was highly unique in that, not just the way it sounded, but like, everything about you even. And like from the way that even your style was a component, ironically.
It's interesting because I probably have a mix of that, because I brought up Dave East because I like his voice. And when my son listens to him and I'm like, this guy's got a great voice, I don't think he cares. Like my son hears like the beat underneath of it and all that other stuff like and I don't care about that as much. Like I even like Pop Smoke's voice. Like I hear voices more, but it doesn't open up a doorway for me to talk about it with younger people who like rap music.
That's interesting because most people do gravitate to the beat more.
Yeah. I don't really care about the beat so much. I'm like, this guy's voice is really neat. And my son's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, you don't hear that? I'm like, you're listening to the same thing I'm listening to. You don't hear that? And he's like, nah, that's not the part I care about. I'm like, it's very interesting. So, all right, I'll let you go after you tell me what's the best rap app ever. Who do you love?
The best rap what?
Act. Who did it right in the 90s?
Okay, so man, that's completely like, so
Yeah, of course, your opinion.
I can't honestly, like, I've been influenced by so many artists, but like a top one for me would be Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Those guys were phenomenal. They were kind of like, for me personally anyways, what made me want to be part of the culture, what made me want to make my own version of whatever that is, and contribute in my own way. Their music kind of really set a fire under me, but so many, because I really do like all kinds of music. Like I really enjoy almost everything, minus I suppose country, and I can listen to like older country, like Johnny Cash type stuff. I can't listen to modern country. That makes me cringe. Yeah, but I don't think I've listened to I love the blues. I will listen to the blues any day. Yeah. I listen to all kinds of stuff like Afrobeat, whatever. I really enjoy a variety. It's kind of boring when I listen to one thing.
I heard what I heard recently that threw me off was I started watching Justified. It's available now on Hulu. And the theme song is a bluegrass rap mix. And I can't tell if I really like the show, but in the beginning when I wanted to watch another episode to hear the theme song again. I was like, well, that's a mixture I've never heard before in my life.
Yeah, it almost sounds confusing. I'd have to hear it to get an idea.
You find the Justified theme when you get off of here and tell me it's not a little catchy. But cool. All right. Well, Shaun, now we've gone from an hour to hour and 45 minutes.
Okay.
But I had a really good time talking to you. I'm really glad you did this. I'm super happy that you found your way and you're, you're making so many positive changes for yourself. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Yeah. I enjoyed chatting with you, man.
Cool. Me too. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. You know where to go to find a great blood glucose meter. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Thank you so much to the Contour Next One blood glucose meter for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. And of course, a huge thanks to Shaun for coming on the show and sharing so much.